Hi, everyone. Welcome to a very special edition of Spanning the Need. You know what? We're going to talk about a local person who left our area to become an inspiration to just not people in our community here in the Mahoning Valley, but she's given a remarkable involvement in the community where she is in South Carolina. Howland graduate, Andrea Mock.
Hello, Tony. It's so nice of you to have me, and it's wild. I feel like we should tell your viewers we didn't just go to the same high school. We were like friends in the same high school and ran in the same circle and hung out together all the time.
Yeah, I do have a friend, everyone. So there she is, Andrea Mock. and we talk a little bit about what you've accomplished, and the reason why we're here today is because you're getting inducted later this week to the Howland All Achievement Hall of Fame, which I was inducted about 3 or 4 years ago. And it's an honor to go back to your alma mater. How does that feel?
Just wild and surreal and humbling. And I kind of thought when I first saw the email, wait a minute, y'all mean me? Because I don't feel like anything I've done is that extraordinary. I'm a journalist, so I'm used to the story being about everybody else and not about myself. So sweet, humbling, and awkward at the same time. Because like I said, I'm used to talking about other people being the story and not me.
And we're doing the reverse, as you're usually interviewing people and not sitting on the other side. So now you'll feel the difference on how people feel when you're in an interview spot. So maybe that'll change a little bit when you interview.
I know. This is stress. It's much more stressful on this end than it is on that end.
Well, let's talk a little bit about your background. So you graduated with me back in 1998 from Howland, and then kind of talk about where you went career-wise and what you did, because I think we want to understand how you've kind of started and where you are now, just to kind of understand, like, you're now a well-known reporter in the South Carolina region, I should say, because you were covering the Murdoch case, which was pretty much national and worldwide. So talk a little bit about your journey and how you've just become inspired in the field of journalism.
Well, it's been a really long journey to get here. But as wild as this is, I'm one of those weird people that knew what I wanted to do my first day of my freshman year of college. And I knew I wanted to be a journalist. I loved to read. I loved to write. I love to talk. I love politics. I love learning. I'm a nerd. I love to learn. And the most fabulous thing about being a journalist, Tony, is that, I learn something new every single day. I am studying every single day. Because the news of the day is always different. But we can talk about that later. But how I started. Okay. So I went to Ohio University and I got a scholarship, a part academic scholarship to go there. And I was there for 2 years, but then I realized while I was there that school, it's a great school. The Scripps School is a great school, but it's definitely geared towards print journalism. And my uncle, who was a Youngstown news director at Channel 33 for decades, and then he became the head of PR for General Motors, Tom Mock, he was on the board at Kent State at the time. And he said, Annie, Kent is really doing amazing things. They have their own television station and it goes out to the local community, it's not just on campus, it goes out to the whole county. And you really got to come check it out. So I did. And then I switched 2 years in. And then while I was in college, I actually got a job for PBS. And the show was called News Ohio. So I hosted a show where we traveled around the state and taught kids about civics and government and how to get involved. And then because of that, I basically had a professionally shot resume tape. So I was able to get a job right out of school. I mean, I got a job 2 weeks out of college and moved for my first job in television, which was in Clarksburg, West Virginia. And I was the morning anchor there. And it was wonderful. And I signed a 2-year contract and I was there for 2 years. And I made $20,000 a year. People think journalists start out with a lot of money. They don't. And I had to ask Dave and Melinda Mock for Subway gift cards for Christmas because I wanted to eat good. And then from there, I went to Toledo and I worked at NBC 24 and I was an anchor there and a reporter. And then from there, I came here to Columbia, South Carolina, where I am now at the CBS affiliate. And you know, I just decided to stick the landing on this one. I loved Columbia. We're the capital of the state. So the State House is 5 miles from where I'm sitting. So that's very exciting, you know, covering that when they're in session, when the legislators are in session, and being a part of that. And I've been here now. I've been an anchor for WLTX now for 16 years, which is wild.
Well, I have to ask this question. You're Midwest and grew up in Ohio. What made you kind of go suddenly to South Carolina? Because that's a big change for people that are from the Midwest.
You're right. And it was at the time a culture shock. So you're right. Like everybody in the newsroom made fun of me because I said pop. It has been beaten into me that I now say soda because I've almost lived here now for the same amount of time that I lived up north. Oh, hang on. I'm getting text messages. So
everyone loves you, Andrea.
No, it's reporters. I now help the reporters during the day with their stories. So but yeah, so I didn't expect to come here. I wish my family would come here too, but everybody I know and love is still back in the Youngstown area or Cleveland.
Yeah, and we look at that you're just not involved in journalism. You're actually well involved in your community. You volunteer for a variety of different stuff, from championing Heroes in Blue and tireless advocate for health. Talk a little bit about that and kind of how that started as well.
Well, you know, it's wonderful to get to make a difference in the things that matter to me. You know, my grandma, Andrea Mock, who, you know, obviously born and raised in Warren, and she had Alzheimer's at the end. And that was something that was very hard on all of us. And so it was such a blessing for me to get involved with the Alzheimer's Association. And I host that walk every year. And then when I get to speak, you know, because I always speak at these events, I really get to speak from the heart. So that makes a big difference. And yes, I helped found Heroes in Blue, which is now Serve and Connect. It was, you know, a story here that I'll never forget. Now she's one of my dearest friends, but Cassie Alia's husband, Greg Alia, was responding to a call. He was a Forest Acres police officer, and he was responding to a call and at a mall of somebody with a weapon, and he was shot and killed that day. And he and Cassie had just had a baby, and I covered the story. I was sent to cover the story, and it just ripped my heart into pieces. And I just said, you know, I want to help. So I reached out to her, and that was years ago. And now Serve and Connect is statewide. We do a program called Greg's Groceries because his name was Greg, and we give, basically it's a organization that's built to build trusting relationships between police officers and the communities they serve, right? Because there's mistrust on both ends, and which leads to things happening like happened to Greg Alia.
Little bit of faults on both sides of the table. Right. It's an unfortunate circumstance.
So we build those community relationships. It's called community policing. So with Greg's Groceries, we give as many officers all over the state of South Carolina, because we're statewide now, many boxes of groceries in their cruisers, so that when they're patrolling and they see a family in need or somebody in need, every box contains enough food to feed a family of 4 for a week. So it's just one little way, you know, to build that trust. So I mean, it's been wonderful, on top of this being a great job, because, you know, my days are wild. Like if I told you what I did at the noon show today, it's, you know, I've already had a crazy day because Alec Murdoch was in court again and pleaded guilty to federal charges. And we have a local case here, a boat crash case that's in court this morning. So on top of getting to do the news every day, you know, getting to be involved in the community is like the best part. I volunteered, Tony, why did I do this? I volunteered on Saturday to be in the city's dunking booth as a fundraiser for Sister Care. And now I'm trying to think how I can get out of it.
Well, I'm going to, as a person that kind of has been in the community and volunteered and tried to give back, you ain't getting out of it. I will make sure of it. I will make phone calls. Yeah, you've already agreed to be in that dunk booth.
My goose
You're going to do it.
Okay, fine.
And we talk about that in in journalism and TV, print media, anything. Would you consider that story that you just told about the officer that passed away because of the circumstances, that is probably one of your stories that has really moved you and hit you the most throughout your career?
Yes. And that's a great question. Thinking back, because I've been here so long, you do almost segment your life as a journalist from the big stories you've covered. So, here in South Carolina, Governor Nikki Haley was our governor when, and I don't know nationally, I know people heard about this, but not as much as it affected us here, when a gunman went into Emmanuel 9 Church down in Charleston and opened fire on innocent people that were there to study the Bible, and killed them. And he's in jail now, thank goodness, serving a life sentence. But it was that instance that finally led our state house to move the Confederate flag and take it off of the state house grounds. I mean, it's crazy to think that it was still there in the 2000s. So that's a moment I always remember, the day the flag came down and the day the Emmanuel 9 were killed. Then we had something that we called the Great Flood, Tony, where, you can look it up, of 2017 here in Columbia, South Carolina. They called it 1,000-year flood, and all of our homes flooded. And Brady was just a baby at the time. He would be embarrassed that I told this story. But we had no water, no power in our house. And as a boy, it was great. He got to go to the bathroom off the back porch, and he thought he was living large. Life was fun. And so we stayed on air, to help people and show people where the flooding was, because people were driving right into it and their cars were getting swept away. We stayed on air for 2 weeks straight and lived at the news station, and Brady was in a sleeping bag right in a little set off to my side. With me here, we had no water at home, no power, took baths with baby wipes. But you do it because you have to. We're like first responders, right? We have to keep going in the middle of a crisis. So that's one I always remember. And then, of course, being at the Murdaugh trial in January and everything that came with that. And, there was such a public fascination with that, but these were all people we know. I know every single person in the courtroom. I know every lawyer. I know, the families. And
it's weird. And it's weird that we get that factuation with this type of case when there are multiple other cases across the country that are probably similar, maybe not as similar, but similar in that regards of what he was accused of. And
absolutely. You're completely right. There's family violence every day. So why there was that fascination with the case, I'm guessing money, power, influence, the amount of influence that his family, that the Murdaugh name carries in South Carolina. But, covering it, watching it is one thing, but being there in the courtroom, sitting behind Buster, pulls on your emotions in a completely different way. And so, that's one thing, is that I don't try as a journalist to not have emotions. A lot of people do, but I'm I can't hide it. If I'm emotional about something, it's going to come out. And I think viewers connect to that sometimes even more than they connect to the stone-faced, perfect news anchor at all times.
Well, and I think you bring up a good point, is that you've learned a lot of these different skills and things that you've done over the years. And I think we kind of go back to the original thing is, yes, you are being inducted into the 2020 Howland Achievement Hall of Fame. You're a Howland grad, and you kind of look at it as Howland is kind of what really started you.
Yes. My gosh.
How did Howland High School and Howland really mold you to get to where you were in college and then to where you are now?
That's a fantastic question, Tony. As an interviewer, that's a great question. Because I
got to get them right one time.
I mean, yeah, you nailed it on that one. Because, well, we're lucky enough to have a fantastic public education in Howland High School. And I don't say that just because my mom is still teaching in Howland High School. And my dad was the athletic director, obviously, Dave Mock, for decades, and then was the middle school principal after he retired from being the athletic director. Okay, I'm going back to middle school. Mr. Reese,
Oh,
who I know recently has passed away. His
yeah.
wife, Mrs. Reese, though, who was our gym teacher, is still alive. Mr. Reese got me in love with literature. We read Edgar Allan Poe. I read Catcher in the Rye. I loved words. I loved studying with him. And then it was Mr. Timlin.
Oh, yes.
Who was big and scary, but I'm like, I'm the daughter of Dave Mock. I know big and scary. It's fine. And
not unless you know Mr. Timlin, who, for the record, was a lot of different things, but a tremendous teacher.
Tremendous teacher.
In a different way. In a very different way.
In a different way. He had that podium and he would shake the podium when he got passionate and you'd be like, oh God. But he taught us the basics of writing and the 5-sentence essay and the intro, body, conclusion. And so he taught me to write faster. So, then it was him. Then I got to high school, Mrs. Lowe, Mrs. Hauk, my AP English teachers. Fabulous. Again, love for writing, love for the word.
Boy, that's really bringing back memories.
Bringing it back, Tony. Mrs. Parise, who was our yearbook editor, and I was on the yearbook staff. So here I am literally doing journalism in high school, gathering pictures, which a lot of times were of our friends, and putting them in the yearbook. I think there's a great flashback dance picture of you, if I remember, in the yearbook, if anybody wants to look that up.
No, we're okay. There is no picture. I have it. There is no picture.
I believe you danced and we all gave you the floor.
But boy.
Anyway, Mrs. Parise, I was doing journalism by doing that. And so that was a fabulous education. And then Mrs. Cleo, who was my choir teacher, me and Carla Vanetti and Amanda Beagle, sat next to each other in choir for all those years. We were soprano ones, and that helped with me being in front of an audience and performing. And she would take us to all these competitions and performances, and I was in all the specialty choirs. And, standing up in front of a group and being able to talk and sing and be used to that. So it was all of those things that I just realized. And then sitting down with my guidance counselor to talk about what my passions were and what I thought I wanted to do. And like I said, I already had an uncle in the media in Youngstown at Channel 33.
Dealt with him a lot.
That's right. And so here's
an interesting fact about him. He was my first or second Game of Hope for the Hope Foundation back in 2005, 6, or 7. He was actually our MC for the event.
I love that.
Yeah. So and Amanda Beagle, who actually was another inductee, I think maybe a couple years before me. So it's an interesting loop of kind of like the things you look at is, hey, we all graduated from high school in 98. Now look what a lot of people have accomplished. Like another one that's getting inducted, Ryan Allison, who is a Howland grad. And I think that's who from WKBN.
Yes. And I guess that's if there's one thing I can tell people, it's that no matter where you're from, you can accomplish your dreams. I've won 4 Emmy Awards, South Carolina's News Personality of the Year, AP News Awards, and I've interviewed 3 sitting presidents. I flew to New York and got to sit with UN Ambassador Nikki Haley when she was there. I've sat on the UN floor and interviewed her. And all of my training and all of my start came from Howland High School. And so whatever your dream is, it is possible. You can do it. And you've got a great start. They say that you should give the best thing for your parents or your town to give you is roots and wings. And I certainly am that person. I learned everything from Howland High School and got my start and my confidence in myself, and then have wings and have flown off and done big things.
Well, and we kind of look at that as it's an honor, and you're coming back from South Carolina. Hopefully, we'll be able to see your mom and dad, and I know that we're looking forward to having you be inducted with the rest of the great group. This class that I've seen is huge. I mean, the people that are being honored or inducted is a big class, and I have to ask you this question: if there was one person at Howland at all that inspired you the most, or one or two, I'll give you one or two. Who may that be? Because you've named a lot of great people, which are all great admirers and great role models.
Well, Mrs. Cleo, as funny as this is definitely one of them. She believed in us and her class, to be able to take choir every day for 4 years. I mean, think about that. Like, you're in all these classes, all these AP classes, grinding it out, tough. And then you get to go and sit next to two dear friends and sing. And the way tiny Mrs. Cleo was able to command 110 kids in a
Especially
room.
our group. Especially
Yeah.
our group. I wasn't a singer. I wasn't in choir. Don't
Exactly. We were loud. We talked a lot. I interviewed Hillary Clinton several years ago, and she's just like Mrs. Cleo, like same vibe, tough lady, in command, in control. And I loved that about her. I respected that about her. And then Mrs. Paris getting me, ready for a career in journalism and teaching me, how to put a layout together and what kind of caption to write and what type of pictures to take and all of that. Those were two very special women that when I look back, Mr. Tomlin was my history teacher. I loved him. He was so sweet, so nice. He was my eighth period. Did we have eighth period, Tony? Wasn't it 8?
I think it was 7.
7?
I don't remember.
But senior year, my last class of the day was with him and Peter Theophilus and Chris Doubt. Jen Zader, a whole bunch of us were in that class together. And that was great fun. I don't know. There's so many great memories. Like I just have nothing but great memories from my time at Howland. And of course my dad, like having my dad in high school with me was at times not great, but for the most part, amazing.
I don't think it ever is when your mom or dad is a teacher, because and all the teacher would probably talk like, hey, Andrea did this or Andrea did that. And for some odd reason, it would get back to your dad and your mom, but they wouldn't say anything. They just know when you did something like, yeah, are you going to tell us about your day today? And then you're like, oh, no, I'm good. Oh, no.
Fine. I have nothing to say. Fine.
Exactly.
Having him in school was great. And I would go up there for study hall and hang out and be able to look over the gym and, those windows that used to be into the gym. So we'd sit back there and have our study hall and do our homework and then check out all the kids taking gym. It was wonderful to have my dad there. It was a very unique experience. It didn't make dating anybody easy, but it was a great experience.
Well, and actually, let's talk a little bit about that, because I have 2 more questions for you, because I know we're short on time. The first question I have is talk about your family. You're married, you have kids. Talk a little bit about how that's where that is right now.
It's fabulous. My husband, William, is a CFO here in town and just wicked smart with numbers, and which is hilarious because I'm horrible with numbers and organization. And my son Brady is just the light of my life. And he's 13 now, and he plays basketball and he plays soccer, but he is on the academic team at high school because I have drilled into him, listen, like, forget about being an athlete. What is it? Like 1% of kids get an get an athletic scholarship to college. Your gift from God is your brain. And that is what you need to foster and put time into. So I let him do the sports, but he's also on the academic team. So boy after my own heart, that knows that it's okay to be nerdy sometimes. And what I always say, Tony, when I go and speak to classes, I just went and guest spoke at USC this week, University of South Carolina. USC is in Columbia, South Carolina, not in California. But I always tell the kids,
all expenses paid to California.
No, I always tell the kids, be a nerd. Nerds make more money. And that is the truth.
Hey, that's good advice. Good advice.
Yeah.
And we wish you nothing but the best, and we appreciate you taking time. We hope to see you soon here and get inducted in the next week or so. And I may see you there. You never know.
I hope you do. And you know what? If any Howland friends want to reach out, I'm Andrea Mock SC across all platforms. That's my name on Instagram, on Twitter, or X as it's now called. And I'm on Facebook as well, Andrea Mock SC. And I'd love to connect with some Howland folks as well.
Well, and this will be the last question that I'll ask, because I like to end my show with a variety of questions, but I'll ask just the final two. My one question to you is, because you've done a lot, you've been very successful, and usually with success there are a lot of challenging times. So what was a challenge during your career that you really learned a lot from? Because you know how it's not a straight up, it's an up and down battle in anyone's career. So what was a little bit of that to really make you focus on learning?
It's a really easy answer. For sure, it's being a woman. And 20 years ago, now it's different. Okay, the Me Too movement has happened and things have changed. But gosh, Tony, 20 years ago, you know, if you think about it, journalists, you know, back when I was a reporter, now I'm an anchor, so I stay in-house. But back when I was a reporter and, you know, you go out, you're sent out to interview all of the mayors and your congressmen and the police chief and the fire chief and the attorney representing the case. And 20 years ago, so yeah, and you know me, Tony, I'm 5'1.5". So getting people to take me seriously when I'm 5'1" and I'm a woman, and you know I'm a nerd, and I know I'm a nerd, but they don't think that. They think, oh, here's a dumb blonde coming in to interview me. And that it's palpable. And having to fight, like there were literally press conferences that I've been at, you know, with the microphone up in the face, and they will answer every man in the room before they come to me. Now that doesn't happen anymore, obviously. And now in this town, everybody knows who I am. So they know they have to answer my questions. But back in the beginning, it was rough. And, you know, sometimes sexual harassment, things like that you'd have to deal with, and being out in the field and just being in a man's world all the time. So getting respect, fighting through that, pushing past it, and knowing that even though I'm a woman, even though I'm 5'1", and even though I'm blonde, you know, I deserve respect. I'm smart. I should be here. I deserve to be here. And I deserve just as much respect as the 6'1" guy standing next to me asking the same questions. So, but it's changed a lot. You know, now a lot of mayors are women. A lot of the doctors are women. A lot of the prosecutors are women. But 20 years ago when I started, that was not the case. So being a part of the movement where women are in the leadership positions and not always in the supporting roles, being and watching that evolve has been an amazing thing.
And that's a great career, looking at everything in a bigger picture instead of just kind of doing that. This would be my last question. If there was one person you would want to meet, past or present, who would it be and why?
Ooh. That is such a good question. I've gotten to interview a lot of people. Well, I wouldn't say they're not a celebrity, because celebrities are always exactly what you see. Like what you see, very often what you see is what you get. And if they are exactly who they seem.
Remember, they don't have to be alive. They could be past. So it could be someone that was born in the 1900s or lived in the 1950s. So it's a very wide. It's a very wide.
Abraham Lincoln, for sure. Abraham Lincoln, like the things that he did in his presidency, obviously during the Civil War, and then trying to bring the country back together and unite the country. I would love to talk to him. Alexander Hamilton. I mean, thinking about his brilliance in the way that he said, no, we can't have states having all the power. We have to have one United States, one federal government, one Federal Reserve. That, the brilliance of that, when you think about that all these 100 years later, amazing. Not that this would ever happen, but Princess Diana. So we were in, what year, how old were we, Tony? I just remember I was in the car with Jen Zader and Shelley Watts when Princess Diana died.
I'm going to have to tag all them and be like, hey, she made comments about you.
Yeah, I think we were coming back from the Canfield Fair. So I don't remember what year it was, but I know that that happened. And I would have loved to have talked to her and heard what her experience was like being ostracized in the family and how she fought through it. So as a nerd, as a history nerd, it would all be, you know, people from history that have made an impact and changed the world.
Andrea, I appreciate you taking time.
Yes,
I
Tony,
know you've got
this
a
is
lot
so
going
much
on.
fun.
Congratulations on your inductee. We hope to see you down the road. We'll hope to see you in Howland here shortly. You may already be almost on your way. We'll get to you. We appreciate everyone joining us for this very special edition of Spanning the Need. We hope you'll enjoy more of our podcasts and shows at spanningtheneed.com. Everyone, have a great night. Andrea, stay on. Everyone, good night.